Hi, everyone. My name is Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager at Fairygodboss, and Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace by increasing transparency, and we offer a ton of great free resources like anonymous company reviews, job listings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and so much more to help you succeed throughout your career. So due to some issues earlier in the week, we won't be having the chat functionality today. However, feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen. And with the Q&A, you can leave questions as yourself or anonymously, so don't be afraid to ask whatever comes to mind. We'll be reserving some time at the end of today's webinar to get to as many questions as we can. We're also recording today's session, and we'll be sending it out in a follow-up email later today. So if you want to rewatch it back, send it to a friend, or catch anything you may have missed, you'll have the ability to do so. Here with me today is Lisa. She's a career change coach and the founder of Career Clarity Method. She helps multi-passionate and ambitious individuals create the careers they've been wishing for, and received her coaching certification as one of only 7 coaches in the world trained in the Pivot Method. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today, and I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you for having me, Sam. Fairygodboss is an amazing resource, and I've always seen incredible people coming to these webinars, so I'm sure today will be no exception. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen here because I've got some lovely slides for everybody. So Sam, can you let me know, and just take yourself off mute, if you are able to see the slide and hear everything and it's looking good and ready to go?
Looks perfect. You're all set.
Awesome. Like Sam said, we unfortunately are not going to have the chat today, but if you have any questions, any moments of participation, even if you want to just tell me, oh my gosh, yes, that resonates for me, please don't hesitate to put it into the Q&A box. I'd love any opportunities to have that interactivity and engagement, especially to know if this is resonating, it's making sense, or if there's any clarification that you're needing as we go. But our topic for today is how to maintain your focus and motivation in your job search, especially in weird and unprecedented economic times, because we are in a uniquely funky kind of season right now, right? I've been talking to some people who were graduates in 2008 who are feeling practically PTSD about what's going on right now of, oh my gosh, the economy has taken this huge hit. Jobs seem to be drying up. Offers seem to be being paused or pulled. Companies are going on to hiring freezes. I need a job, either because I've just been let go and I need to find something new, or because I'm in a situation that feels unstable and I'm looking to get into something more stable, or because I plain don't like my job. And all the time that I've been at home in my stay-at-home or shelter-in-place right now has really caused me to rethink some things in my life. And I don't want to keep doing this forever. This sucks. This can be somebody else's dream job. I can let somebody else do this job who would really feel engagement and excitement about this, but I need to move into something that feels more like me. So no matter which of those 3 buckets you are in today, you're going to get some good information, tips, and help from our conversation today. So let me go ahead. Oh shoot, Sam, I can't see the Q&A box while I'm in presenter or in full screen share mode. So if you want to take yourself off mute and interrupt with any questions that you're seeing that are sort of relevant to the moment, please do. And if there aren't any that are feeling like they're urgently needing to be covered in the conversation, we'll have about 10-15 minutes at the end that I'm happy to answer any questions that we've been stockpiling and anything that comes in live.
That sounds good. We have some questions, but we'll hold them till the end just for now.
Okay, perfect. So we will start today's conversation with a real and undeniable fact that you all probably know at a very visceral level in your life right now. Sometimes job searching sucks, but it does not always have to. And there are ways that we can make the best of it and make it easier, make it more enjoyable, make it feel like you're more in flow and you're getting more momentum out of it. And so I want to start us out with a conversation about a former client of mine named Jenny. So Jenny, back when we were working together, was an epidemiologist working at a hospital in the greater Cincinnati area. And she was looking for something new and trying to figure out what could be out there for her. And she started looking at all these different possibilities in the world. So I'm a career change coach, and oftentimes when I work with people, we start from the I don't know what I want, but it's not this question, and then go all the way through to the job search process. So in her discernment process, she looked at a whole bunch of different options for things that felt more aligned with her strengths, with her interests, with her personality, and with the lifestyle that she wanted. Because one of the biggest components that she was looking for was she wanted a role that was full-time work from home. And this is a couple of years ago, right? Right now, pretty much every job is full-time work from home unless you are in an essential function, nursing, grocery store workers, etc. But back when she wanted this was sort of a revolutionary thing. And so the reason why she wanted it was because her parents' health was in a sort of funky spot. She lived away from home. And she and her husband wanted to be able to go and visit and spend time with her family and just work remotely whenever they needed to, if they needed to, both for fun visits and for maybe more medically urgent visits. So in Jenny's job searching journey to try to find a role that fit that need for her lifestyle, that allowed her to bring all of her gifts in data and her experience in the healthcare world and her really analytical nature into a role, she had to hustle with the job search. And she felt like it was just a slog, and it was sapping so much energy and taking so much momentum from her. And so in the process of our work together, we talk through a lot of the principles that you're going to see in today's conversation, in this presentation, on ways to focus on the most fruitful activities so you're getting the best return for all the time and energy you're investing. We talked about what some expected yields should be so that you have a sense for, am I doing enough doing to get the results and the outputs that I want to get from my work? And we talked about ways to make it easier and make it fun. And so we're going to talk about all of those different things today so that you can be using the same tools that Jenny used when she finally did land her full-time work from home remote role working in healthcare consulting, where she gets to have the lifestyle that she needs. She gets to spend as much time with her family as she wants to, and where her new jump actually enabled her husband to quit his job to start a passion project entrepreneurial gig as well. So for this question of why you are here today, I'd love to give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover in our conversation to make sure that this aligns with what your needs are and your expectations for what you're going to get out of this hour. I know how precious and valuable your time is, so I wanted to make this value-packed and jam-packed with information and helpful stuff. So if you don't already have a place to take some notes, whether it is an old school piece of paper and pen, whether it is a file on Google Docs or Evernote or whatever, make sure that you've got a spot to take some notes on what's coming up. Although we will also send out the replay of this afterwards, so you can rewatch it in case you miss anything. But here are the goals for our workshop today to make sure they align with your expectations. Number one, we are going to review the top 5 ways to stay motivated and putting in the time and effort into your job search even when it is hard. Number 2, we're going to talk about ways to ensure that your job search actions are leading to results. One of the most tragic things that somebody has ever said to me was when they reached out and they said, Lisa, I've applied for 200 jobs and I haven't gotten an interview. You should never apply for 200 jobs and not get an interview. I will give you actually something that nobody else that I have seen out there talks about, which is what your expected rates should be of if you send out this many applications, you should expect this many interviews so that you have a metric to track and see if things are working. You should never get to 200 applications and not get an interview. You should be able to tell, oh gosh, these applications aren't working for me way sooner than that so that you can get support, you can course correct, you can try new things, you can try a different strategy to get more of the results that you need so that your momentum doesn't go to absolutely nothing because you're exhausted and frustrated that it looks like nothing's working. It'll give you a really easy way to create a feedback loop so you're constantly iterating, testing, and improving on what you're doing. We're also going to be talking about suggestions you can be implementing today, in the next 20 minutes after the webinar, in the next week, in the next month. Because I am a big believer, and any of you who have joined me for a webinar with Fairygodboss before or at Career Clarity before know I am a big believer that information by itself is not enough. We have to pair the information with behavior change and action so that you will be able to get the results that you want. And then the fourth thing we'll cover is to give you some hope right now. because don't we all need a little extra hope right now in this season? So hello from behind the slides. I am Lisa, and this is what I call my professional Barbie headshot here from my corporate days back when I was living and working in Washington, D.C., just blocks away from the White House. And I bring up this picture because I looked real polished and impressive on the outside and felt empty on the inside. And I feel like this is true for a lot of people sometimes, especially those of us who still have jobs right now, that people might look at you and say, oh, you're so lucky that you have a job right now. But it might not feel that way. And in today's conversation, in today's space, everything is fair game. There is no wrong feeling. There is no bad feeling. And actually, we're going to talk about how powerful letting our true feelings come through really can be here as point number 1 of our 5 points we're going to talk about. But what I was finding was that while things looked okay on the outside, they didn't feel good, didn't feel right, didn't feel like me. And in this season of my career, back in my probably early to mid 20s, I was noticing that in my peers and the people around me, the more I would look around, the more I noticed that everybody kind of seemed like they were low-key unhappy, that they were just settling, that they were sort of giving up on some of the ambitions and passions and dreams that had been driving them into their career in the first place, or their grad degree in the first place, whatever it was. And I felt like, even at that early age, that was no way to live. That was not a way to craft a career. That was not a way to craft a life. And it was that decision, that settling for, at that point, what would have been the next 4 decades of my life, was not an option. And I wanted to figure out what the options were to be able to feel like I had a life and a career that I recognized. I had some life in my life. The work that I felt like I was doing mattered and was meeting my values and needs. And that's actually what spurred me into becoming a career change coach in the first place. So if any of you are with us today and you are feeling like you don't want to settle, or that you don't want to look dead in the eyes for the next 5 years or 10 years of your life just because things feel real scary right now, or you don't want to feel a sense of desperation in your job search, then you are in the right place today. And we're going to talk about all of those pieces. So let's talk about the history of financial recessions, which is albeit a weird place to start, but I, back in my undergrad days, was an economics major. And so I think that it's really important to know the numbers and know the facts. We're going to talk about a lot of numbers today, so hang with me, even if that feels a little bit weird or scary, because the numbers are meant to help give you some sense of peace and some sense of ease, even if they seem a little bit weird and uncomfortable. So we're going to go through some quick economics nerdiness here. So when financial recessions have happened in the past, let's say the past 100 years or so, the time that it takes for the economy to bounce back and to get back to its pre-recession levels and to have the stock market get back to sort of like a normalized space from which it can grow even further. Here are a couple examples of how long that has taken. So after 9/11, when we took a huge hit, airlines shut down for days, it took less than 2 months for the market to bounce back to pre-9/11 market valuations. Less than 2 months, not too shabby. Reason for hope. After the financial crash in 2008 that closed banks, it took 22 months to get back into the same market performance ballpark. So a complete recovery back to where we were before took less than 2 years to do. Now, 2 years can feel like a long time, but 2 years in the scope of all of us and all of our careers is probably a fairly short time. I would not be surprised if there are a couple people, knowing Fairygodboss draws a really diverse crowd. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple people who are probably close to retirement and would be retiring in about 2 to 5 years here. But I'm guessing for the most part, most of you who are here have more than 2 to 5 years left in your career path. So this is to say, again, given enough time, the market never doesn't recover. The market always recovers. And for those of you who are reading these alarmist articles about the Great Depression and how we might be trending in that direction. Now, in the Great Depression, the market lost 80% of its value That's like a step away from being a complete 100% of its value, complete financial collapse and ruin. The Great Depression was a huge, huge shock. But what happened after the Great Depression was that there was a deflationary period. And the New York Times did a study on how long it took for purchasing power prior to the Great Depression to be back where it was, or to be fully recovered in terms of its value. And the New York Times study says that it only took 4 years and 5 months for the market to recover the 80% of its value that it lost. So again, if you have more than 5 years left in your career, hopefully this is making you feel hopeful and positive that given enough time, the market never doesn't recover. This is not going to be your life forever. You are not going to be unemployable. You are not going to have to give up on all of your dreams about what's possible in your career. So even the worst recession in history that caused us to put safeguards and insurance in place so that it would never happen again, by the way, had a market recovery in under 5 years. And other recent recessions have taken way less time to recover. So 5 years is both a very long and a very short amount of time. But what this means is there is no reason to give up hope permanently. There's a reason to keep moving. There's reason to keep applying. And to take this a step further, in Harvard Business Review, there was an article that came out, I think back in 2018, so like weirdly prescient, that said that in recessions over the last 30 years, 17% of public companies fared particularly badly, but 9% of companies didn't simply recover after a recession, they flourished and outperformed their competitors by 10% in sales and profit growth. So the difference maker in this was preparation. So our goal for today is to talk about how to find those 9% for you in what you want to do and go after them, because they are still hiring, they are still growing, they still need the gifts and talents that you have to offer in order to contribute to their bigger picture mission and vision. Now, I want to share the story of Grace. Grace is a financial coach. She's a financial advisor. And I was interviewing her a couple of years ago for an article that I wrote on how to create a money plan that supports your happy plan. And when I was interviewing her and we were talking about preparation, she was telling me about this time when her husband had been in a really serious car accident. So he couldn't work. They had huge unexpected medical bills. It was tragic. It was scary. There was a lot of grief, a lot of crazy stuff happening. And what she said that I thought is really important to share is that the situation taught me that it's important to be prepared, but community is one of the most important things that you can have, right? You cannot be completely prepared for anything and everything, and community will help bridge the gap and get you through. So if change is the only constant, as Jenny Blake says, let's get better at it. And in conclusion, it is so good you are here today. So let's talk about the 5 things that will help for you to get your motivation and focus game on point in job searching, given all this information. Momentum maker numero uno, you need to remember why you are job searching. I know this sounds obvious, but it's not. Because the thoughts and feelings that create and fuel inner motivation are incredibly important in a time like this, especially when we want to slide into a depressive funk. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the last 5 weeks have been putting my emotions all over the place. And if I am waiting for my emotions to be the thing that I'm relying on to do this, that I'm not going to job search until I want to do it, I'm not going to job search until I feel like it, it could be a really hard thing to gain motivation and traction right now. So the question to ponder to start you off is, why are you job searching right now? And insofar as you can, to disassociate that from solely just being because I have to pay my bills right now, because I'm unemployed right now, because I'm super unhappy and things are unstable right now. Because the more you tie it to something that feels aspirational, something that ties into that dreaming that we talked about not giving up on, the easier it's going to be for that to be stable through the space where you're going through a lot of emotional ups and downs. And what I'll say too is that there can sometimes be a lot of virtue and a lot of value in using motivational emotions to help fuel you and help add more fuel to the fire when you're already committed and when you're already knowing your why. But we don't want to rely on the emotions by themselves. I wrote an article series back in, I think, 2016 on motivational mindsets. And one of the biggest things that I stressed in that article series was that when you are fired up, like you're pissed off, you are angry, you are frustrated, you are just feeling a lot of intense emotion, that can be a great impetus and trigger to go above and beyond in your motivation, in your activities, in your job searching, your researching, your resume tailoring work. But we need to make sure that we've got a why that can be sustained after some of that initial fire heat burns out. So the first question to ask yourself to get back on the horse and get your mojo back for job searching is, what's the deeper why for why I'm doing this besides just paying the bills? For some of you, it's going to feel really aspirational, like to buy a house or to go to Maui once the stay-at-home orders are lifted, to be able to afford vacations, to be able to afford, you know, getting my nails done or my lashes done the way that I used to. And for some of you, it might be a motivation that feels aspirational, but with sort of like a hint of some other emotional colors in there. Like, my why is to make it so that I don't have to move back in with my parents. Or my why is so that I can keep continuity in the lifestyle that I have right now and I love. So tapping into the why that feels bigger than the emotional ups and downs and the roller coaster that you're on right now is a first big piece of getting a motivational mindset in place and creating that momentum and mojo that you're going to need. Let me know in the Q&A box if you got any questions on that part. I think, like Sam said, we'll try to cover a lot of questions at the end here, but I know that each of these different pieces by itself is an important piece of the bigger puzzle. Now, let me also say that if you feel pretty comfortable about your why, but you're not sure about the what, meaning you're not sure what exactly you're looking for in your job search, if you don't know the type of job that you're looking for right now, that's a topic that's super important to cover because it dramatically affects your success rate. I run an online program called Career Clarity, fittingly with the name of the company. And we talk about job change in 3 phases. Phase 1 is come up with some cool hypotheses about what you could do based on who you are. And phase 2 is test those hypotheses so you can cull them down to the couple hypotheses that feel like they are the most directionally correct and exciting for you right now in this season. And phase 3 is the job search process. And I tell folks, don't go on to phase 3 until you've completed phase 2 and you've culled down to that short list of the things that you want to move into next. And typically that short list, once you've vetted and validated things, is pretty related, right? It could be an external communications job or an internal communications job. It could be doing product management at a tech company or product management at a healthcare company. You know, it is triangulating and getting down to a pretty small list of things that you're looking for so that all your job search behaviors can be as efficient and effective as possible. Now, all of that topic of figuring out the what that you're applying for in your job search is bigger than we can cover today. It probably spans at least a whole nother hour session with Fairygodboss. So number 1, if that's something that you would like, let us know in the Q&A or send Sam an email or reply to the email that Sam's sending you about this webinar to let her know that that's something you'd be interested in the future. But something else that I'll send out there too is that I have an ebook called The Roadmap to a Fulfilling Career that talks about this methodology called the 4 pillars of career fulfillment that I work with clients on, especially in that phase 1, to get clear on who they are, what they want, and come up with some compelling hypotheses about that future work. So if this is a question that you're wrestling with, if you want to go snag a free copy of the ebook, please go ahead and do so. You can go to getcareerclarity.com/roadmap to learn more about that. And I'll see if Sam will even be willing to put that into the email follow-up that goes with this for you too.
I most certainly will be.
You are a gem. Thank you, Sam. Now let's talk about momentum maker number 2, which is create and deepen your leveraged relationships. So relationships are a huge, huge part of maintaining momentum and focus when you're job searching, because in the United States, I don't know if there are folks joining us from other countries here, but in the United States, the Bureau of Labor Statistics does an annual study on how jobs are gotten. And what they consistently come out with every single year is that about 70% of jobs come from relationships. So what this means is that all the time that you're spending doing online job searching and sending out online applications only accounts for 30% of all the jobs in the entire nation that are actually landed. So if you want to be efficient and effective with your time and your investment, thinking about investing in developing relationships is typically going to have a better return on investment than purely playing the online job application game by itself in a vacuum. 70% is a big, compelling number. And one of the other things that that 70% doesn't tell you the full story of is that a lot of times when jobs are being filled, they never get posted online, right? You guys have all, I imagine, heard of the hidden job market, the jobs that never go up publicly or maybe are posted publicly, but it's only for a day and then they immediately take it down. To be able to access those jobs, to know what's coming up before it's posted, to be on somebody's short list to talk to be that ideal candidate so that they only have to post it for a day, you've got to have relationships. You've got to be talking to people and getting a sense for what's going on at a company or what's happening in an industry. So that's why this is so critical and why we're putting it at number 2 for your job search tactics here. And the other thing that I want to say is that a lot of people that I'm talking to right now, when I say, hey, building relationships is super important, say, oh, I don't want to bother anybody right now. There's so much uncertainty. I don't even know if that person still has a job. Like there's so much tumultuousness. I just don't want to reach out. I don't want to bug them or annoy them or be a bother. And so I want to make sure you hear this loud and clear. Just because the economy is looking unpredictable or you're feeling tired of the job searching activities does not mean everyone else is throwing in the towel. So if you're not sending outreach requests or introduction requests to people right now, your competition is. Right? So again, we want to be focused. We want to be strategic. We don't want you to be doing a spray and pray approach where you're emailing every single person in your inbox with a form letter that doesn't show any personalization to say, hey, introduce me to people who do this. But continuing to think about ways to be strategic in building and leveraging relationships is going to be so important to give you a leg up on all the other people who are only doing their job search online or who are not thinking about relationships as being an entry vehicle to getting opportunities.
Hey, Lisa, I'm just going to jump in for one moment because we had a question and you may get to it. So feel free to let me know if you want to hold it for later.
Sure.
But Roanne asked, what do you do when you've exhausted all your leveraged relationships and still have not had a job offer? She says, I've reached out to all of my contacts, but nothing.
Awesome. Great question. We will get to that by the end of this. So if, Sam, if I don't answer that, or Rowena, if you're listening and you don't hear me answer that, send another ping in the Q&A box, but we'll get to that as part of this conversation. So when you're thinking about leveraged relationships, you want to start by first thinking about the strategic relationships that you already have, right? Because there are 2 types of relationships. There are the ones that are already in your network that you already got, and there are the ones that you don't have, right? Because there's no possible way to exhaust all relationships because there are 8 billion people on the planet, and you probably have not met 7.99999 billion of them. But let's start with mapping out the relationships that you already have at the moment, and then we'll talk about the ones that you want to find ways to grow and develop. So the types of leverage relationships that can be particularly powerful in this type of a situation are, number 1, figuring out who the connectors are. So these are the people that you know who just seem to know everybody in an industry, in a geographic area. Maybe they know everybody of a certain age. Maybe they are super well connected in at their gym or at the smoothie shop or the coffee shop. When you think about connectors, don't think about them as only the people who visibly and clearly are connected to the roles that you would want to do or the organizations that you want to work at. Because when they do studies about the most effective relationships, the data always comes back saying that weak ties, which mean the relationships that you have on the very periphery of your life, tend to be the most helpful and most valuable relationships to you, because those people who are pretty far away from you tend to have a totally unique network. They don't have a whole lot of overlap and cross-pollination with yours. So those people have the biggest ability to be helpful to you. So look for people in your life who are connectors, who may not be connected visibly and clearly to where you want to go, because just because they, let's say you want to do product management and you know somebody who used to work at a product management school who's super well connected, but then you also know this other person who's really well connected into their church community. That church community person or temple community person, synagogue community person, that person's still potentially really leveraged and valuable because they might know people in the product management world that your product management person does not know and that you don't know, purely because they have a really unique and different network, but they are a connector, so they're invested in knowing the people. So number one, think about untraditional and creative connectors who you know. Who are the people that you're always thinking, man, you just know everybody? Second, the type of strategic relationship you probably already have. Cheerleaders, people who are unconditionally encouraging of you, people who think you're great, people whose love language is words of affirmation and they give them to you all the time. You want to make sure to know those people and have them on speed dial or be sending them texts on the regular, because one big piece of this motivation and momentum is feeling like you can get that sort of pep talk when you need it to keep your head in the game, especially when it feels like your emotions are in one of those dips and your why doesn't feel like it's compelling enough to get you out of bed. And then a type of strategic relationship you probably already have is a strategist. And this is the person who will poke holes in your plan and your idea in order to make them better. Now, I have an asterisk here because a lot of people know nitpickers. So people who just want to poke holes in your plan and ideas without the intention of trying to make it better, with the intention of trying to dissuade you, demotivate you, make you feel small or stupid. Those people are not strategists. Don't talk to them. Try to create some boundaries and some buffer zone and some space away from those people right now, and really focus in on the strategists who think that 1 + 1 = 3 and who can help take your idea and help make it even better, because they might be the people who say to you, hey, Rowena, have you thought about talking to such and such person over here? Or have you thought about taking a class at this place? Or have you thought about going to this online meetup now that nobody's meeting in person? They're doing this online meetup. So finding those people who can help to grow you and make you better by noticing some of the blind spots and helping you work around them is a really important kind of person to be reaching out to and actively investing time and energy in a relationship with right now. So make sure to be looking at those types of people in your existing relationship network and seeing if they can introduce you to people that they know. Seeing if they can look at their weak ties and folks on the periphery and help to expand your network by being a warm introduction and a warm connection that makes it real easy for somebody else to open up their brain or their Rolodex or their advice to you. But let's also talk about the strategic relationships you want to cultivate more of, right? If you feel like you have emailed every single person that you know and called every single person that you know and texted every single person that you know, right? And this is not just the people who I think can be helpful. This is like reaching out to your old neighbor and saying, hey, listen, this is sort of what I'm looking for. Do you know anybody who does this? Or who do you know that I should talk to who does this? Or what advice would you have on meeting people who do this? And you have hit up every person that you know multiple times. You also want to think about the strategic relationships that you want to cultivate more of. So number one, think about mentors, people who would take an interest in your growth and development, who are in the same general area that you are, probably between 1 to 3 titles above where you are in your current track, who will share advice and relationships with you. And ideally, these mentors are people that you don't necessarily know well, if at all, that you could invest in and say, hey, I need help and advice and love right now. Would you be willing to mentor me? So I want to share the story of Linnea. So she is, all my examples today are Midwest people. So she's from Shaddown and she works in the financial services industry. And she wanted to move into a role that was much more strategic. She used to do digital marketing for a financial services company. She wanted to move into more of a creative and strategic kind of role. And so what she did was she wrote down, who are the movers and shakers in the strategy level in this industry? And who could I reach out to see if they would take me on as a mentee? She found somebody who was awesome at a competitor financial services firm. And what ends up happening, but lo and behold, a matter of months later, that person says, hey, listen, there's a role opening up on the team. It's a VP of strategy role. I think you should apply for it. So Linnea applied, she got the role, and she was able to jump 4 levels, 4 titles to move into this VP role because she had reached out to somebody in the dark, out of the blue, on a whim, to have them be a mentor and develop this really beautiful relationship with them. So not too shabby of a result, worth looking at how you can apply in your own world. Type number 2 of strategic relationships you want to cultivate more of is getting to know people who are decision makers. So people within companies you want to work for who can open doors for you and who have the level of authority to be able to authorize salary and hiring decisions. It's great to know anybody at a company that you want to work for, but if you're talking to somebody who's too low on the totem pole, number one, they're not going to know the things that they can do to advocate for you. And number two, even if they know you and like you and trust you, they may still have to make the case about you to somebody else who has that decision-making authority. So to be able to just get an introduction straight to somebody with decision-making authority can be a great way to shortcut that process and then make it so that the person who gets to know you and likes you actually has the authority to be able to do something about that, to create a role for you, to customize a role for you, to move up a hire in time for you. There are tons of stories of people who say, you know, well, this hire was slated for Q3 of this year, but you are right here in front of us and you'd be a great fit for this. So why don't we see if we can get authorization to move that into our Q2 budget? That sort of thing does not happen every day and to every person, but it absolutely does happen. So it's worth looking at to see if you can make that happen for you. And then the last type of strategic relationship you want to cultivate more of is more of these strategists, people who will poke holes in your plan and ideas in order to make them better. So it could be asking people that you know who you've never been willing to be this vulnerable with before, if they would be a strategist and sit down with you to say, okay, here's what my job search strategy looks like right now. Here's where I'm looking. Here are the places I'm the most excited about. Here are my tactics. What do you think? But it could also be looking for strategists who can help and support outside of your current system. So this is a great place where coaches can come in, consultants can come in, people who work in totally different industries can sometimes give you insight into how things work in their industry. Friends of friends, people that you get introduced to. This is a great place where being willing to be visible and vulnerable and put yourself out there to get more feedback and more perspectives can be super valuable. So if you feel like you have exhausted every possible relationship that you already have, then focusing on how do I create more relationships is a great place to be. I'll also say too, that a big piece of feedback that I get from folks is, well, I had this communication, we had an informational interview, and now I sort of don't know what is in the dating world. If you say went to have a little coffee date or a little brunch date with somebody and your date was going pretty well, you would find ways to do what I call extending the evening, right? So if you went out for a date and you guys had drinks, then the next thing could be like, well, why don't we go get appetizers? Why don't we go get dinner? And then the next thing could be, well, why don't we go get ice cream? And then the next thing could be, well, why don't we go for a walk and go stargazing, right? So when you want to extend a relationship, you can come up with some really creative ways to make the connection go on further. So if you have had a great interaction with somebody who could be a strategist for you, who could be a mentor for you, and you're trying to figure out what you can bring to the table to keep the relationship warm, just in case you need it, is number one, sending along something that might help that person based on your conversation. So an old client of mine, Mike, he was doing tons of informational interviews because he wanted to move from Portland to Seattle, wanted to make a job sector shift, and wanted to make a pretty significant pay jump. So he was networking his face off. And one of the tactics that he tried that worked particularly well was as he was having informational conversations with people and developing those relationships, he would listen really closely to the things that that person needed. So sometimes that person might need something like, man, we're just having a really hard time with quality assurance. So Mike was an engineer. Like, we're having a really hard time with QA. And so Mike might then, after that message or after that interaction, go home, spend a couple nights Googling things and say like, hey, I found this great article on how to implement a QA process. Or he might even say like, here, I put together a 10-point document on how to implement a QA process. You know, here's something that I made for you. I hope it's helpful. But something that Mike did too is that he would be in conversations with people and maybe he didn't hear anything that they were expressing as a need from the business side of things that he felt like he could help with or that he wanted to help with, right? Because sometimes you have an informational interview with somebody and you realize, oh, I really don't want to do this job. That doesn't sound like fun at all. What he would do is he would find something on a personal level to send along. So I remember, I think, and one day if Mike watches this, I'll have to ask him and double check that this is what he did. But there was one person that he spoke with who had a fairly young kiddo, like a 2 or 3 year old kiddo. And I think it was something around something at that developmental stage that that person was struggling with. Like, man, I'm really having a tough time with a parent. my child is, not hitting whatever this developmental milestone is. And Mike went, Googled some suggestions on how to help kids with that particular milestone, and then forwarded on those articles saying, hey, I remember you said this. I thought this might be helpful. Let me know what you think. Little gestures like that to show I listened, I paid attention, and I want to help go a huge way to extending the evening and developing more warmth and connection in that relationship so that person will be willing to stick their neck out for you in the future. So again, point number 2 here, sending along relevant articles as you see them can also be great. So maybe nothing came up in your conversation about something that person needed in particular, but maybe you just read an article recently on how the recession is going to affect technology companies. And you think to yourself, well, I talked to a person at a tech company. Why don't I send this along just to say like, hey, thinking of you, thought this would be helpful or interesting. Hope you've been well. Again, to just keep yourself top of mind, to be helpful, also a great thing to do. And then following up with somebody to tell them about how you applied their advice. This is like the money one. So let's say that you've had an informational conversation with somebody and you say, I really want to move into, let's say, a job in strategy. Let's talk about Linnea. And they say, one of the best things that you can do is there's this edX course from Yale talking about strategic design thinking. And, everybody at the company gets an opportunity to take that. So how cool is it if a month and a half later, you send them an email to say, hey, thanks so much for suggesting that course. I've registered, I'm halfway through it. I'm getting a great grade. I'm learning all these things. Thanks so much for your advice. Let me know if you have any other tips on what I can do to become an even better qualified candidate for this. People love hearing that you listened to them talk and you thought they were smart and you did what they said and it had good results for you. So that's a great way to show that your relationship or their time has had a big impact on you and make them even more interested in helping you out in the future. Be proactive no matter what. Again, if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So let it be you. Be not afraid to keep reaching out, even when it feels weird or funky, to make sure that you are doing what you need to do to create the relationships, to open the doors, to get the opportunities and the offers and the jobs that your competitors in the job search are not going to be getting. I love this quote from Lindsay Pollock. If you're concerned about losing your job, think of yourself 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months into the future. What will the future you wish you had done right now? Then go do that. Momentum maker number 3. You want to become a provably superior qualified candidate. Now let's talk about the ways to do this. Way number 1, increase your skills. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, when I'm applying for jobs, I'm noticing that I'm maybe a 70% fit for the role, but I'm not 100% fit because they're looking for somebody who has blank certification. They want somebody who has a change management certification. So if you're noticing gaps like that, first thing you can do is find a way to increase those hard skills by taking a class on edX, Coursera, Skillshare, Udemy, wherever. You can start or build a GitHub account. Whatever it feels like that would be relevant to apply skills and then to have proof that you applied those skills would be a great thing to do. Maybe you're looking for roles that allow you to be able to, teach and do training and development, but you have to be able to be bilingual. You could even say, I have taken the Duolingo Spanish class and I've gotten to this level of certification. Tons of things are out there that are free or super low cost that can give you provable experience that shows off your skills and differentiates you from other candidates, because differentiation right now is the name of the game. You want to make it so that you are not just another 2-dimensional piece of paper with a whole bunch of black text on it that a HR screener is going to have to be flipping through in the course of a day or a week. HR screeners only spend between 6 and 15 seconds reading over your resume before they decide if they're going to throw you in the recycle bin or if they're going to put you in the possibility to interview pile. So the more that you can show off cool stuff that you're doing that differentiates you and makes you come off the page like a real living, breathing, dynamic human being who can solve a lot of different interesting problems, the better off you're going to be. You might also want to increase your skills by doing thought leadership that helps you to prove subject matter expertise. Right? I had a prospective client come to me and say, I used to work in the fashion industry and I've been learning all this stuff about sustainability. And so now I want a job in sustainability. And I said, cool. How do you prove to people and show them that you know all this stuff that you've been learning about sustainability? and he had nothing. So there are some really easy ways to show off what you've learned in a way that proves to people that you put your money where your mouth is and you can walk your talk. And again, almost all of these are free or super low cost. Posting content in your area, blog posts, LinkedIn articles, podcasts, YouTube, IGTV series, whatever. I had a former client of mine, Jillian, who was super into experiential education. And she decided that she wanted to start an experiential education podcast. So she interviewed 4 or 5 people in the experiential education world, put the podcast onto her resume as a provable skill. And what do you know? She gets hired to go work at an experiential education nonprofit. This stuff works. The last thing you can do to increase your provable skills is to create work samples. So we talked about this with Mike a moment ago, that he created, a 10-point plan for here's how to implement that QA process. So anything that you can do to have a work sample, do the design sample, do the mock-up, write the white paper, do the initial market positioning SWOT analysis, write the sample lesson plan, whatever it is, so you can create a portfolio that you can point people to will help to increase your street cred, help to differentiate you, and help to make it very easy to put you into that interview pile. Now, the other thing to be thinking about to be a superior candidate and to differentiate is thinking about what you might want to write into your cover letter around how this company might need to pivot or adjust during this funky economic time and how your skills and background can uniquely support them in doing this. Or what are the drivers of the organization's productivity, profitability, or success, and how does your skill set allow them to do more of that? One of the biggest things that gets in the way for women in particular, so Fairygodboss, I'm speaking directly to you right now, is that women tend to talk a lot about what they are capable of in the workplace in terms of very qualitative metrics. Things got better, people enjoyed things, they got good feedback. And there's this incredible TED Talk by Susan Kulan-Tuono, and Sam, I can send you the link for that so you can send it out afterwards, about teaching yourself how to get into a commercial mindset, which is how do you tie the great things that you do for an organization to their bottom line so they can clearly see the link between you and money, you and productivity, you and higher margin. So thinking about that and then challenging yourself to articulate that in a cover letter or in an outreach email or in your interview is again going to be another fabulous way to differentiate and make it so that you are way more likely to get the interview and get the job. Momentum maker number 4, track and measure your results. So I want to talk about this, and Sam, I'm almost feeling like we might go a couple minutes over with Q&A today, but I really want to make sure to outline this because I was talking about numbers and I was talking about what people never tell you about the job search. So I want to give you real deal numbers here on how to know if what you are doing is working so that you do not end up sending out 200 resumes without a response. You know when to stop, reevaluate what you're doing, get help, get support, pivot, hire a coach, hire a resume writer, hire whatever to help you get results. So as I think we've made clear in this conversation, the ideal tactics to use for applying for jobs are to start with relationships, right? It's more effective, more efficient. Ask for and get an introduction to somebody at the company where you want to work. Have an initial informational interview where you discern that yes, indeed, this organization and this role is going to be a great fit for me and I can kick butt at this. Have that person who you did the informational interview with walk your resume in, either to give it to the hiring manager, give it to HR, have it bypass the online applicant tracking system entirely, that then will get you to an initial interview, a second round or final interview, and then a job offer. Now, with these things, they are not going to be 100% successful moving from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right? There are very few people in the history of the world who have taken one request for an informational interview and turn it into a job offer with 100% return rate. So what you should be expecting is that when you ask for warm introductions, about 50% of those will turn into informational interviews. And then of informational interviews, if it goes well and you like it and you're excited, you'll probably have an 80% success rate in having that person walk your resume in to the hiring manager or to HR. And depending on the level in the org chart that that person is, that then can lead up to a 50% response rate and getting to an initial interview. So that's a pretty good return rate. Then your initial interview probably has a 50% chance of becoming a second round and a 50% of becoming a job offer. So let's put real numbers with that. Let's start at the bottom here and actually work your way back up. If you want one job offer, then you need to get to about 2 second round interviews or final round interviews, which means you need to have about 4 first round interviews, right? This is just going backwards using those percentages that I shared on the previous slide. In order to get 4 first round interviews, you need 8 people to walk your resume in to HR or to a hiring manager. And so that means you need to have about 10 informational interviews. And in order to get 10 informational interviews, you need about 20 warm introductions, right? So you have not yet sent out 20 requests for warm introductions. It is not surprising that you haven't gotten a job offer yet. So you need to be doing a certain amount of inputting to get the outputs that you want. So if you are in one of those narratives in your head of, oh my gosh, I sent out 3 introduction emails today, and I just feel like nothing's working and I just give up and this is not working. You're right that it's not working because you have to get to a certain number of input activities to get the output result that you want out of it. Now let's talk about the alternate tactics to use, right? Typically people send in their online application. They don't necessarily know anybody there. They don't ask for somebody to walk the resume in. They just send it into the applicant tracking system, fingers crossed, hope that they get to that initial interview, hope they get the second round interview, and hope they get to a job offer. But let's talk about the efficacy of these tactics here. Again, these are baseline rates to help you grade how you're doing. If you're getting better rates than this, fabulous, rock on, mama, way to be awesome. But if you're not getting rates at these levels, then getting support in changing up what you're doing to get help so that you get better results is going to help you keep your motivation as high as possible. So here are results and rates to expect. If you're sending on cold online applications, you should expect a 10% success rate if it's a great fit role for you, meaning at least 70% of the qualifications and probably 85 to 90% of the major qualifications match up with your experience, and you tailored your resume real well to show that off. Otherwise, if you're going through the spray and pray approach where you're applying to jobs that it's like, I'm sort of a 50% match, or I'm missing a lot of the major qualifications, but maybe somebody could see the virtue in this, that should be giving you about a 3% response rate, right? So I hope that this is emphasizing how important it is to tailor your resume real well. Then we're leaving, for example's sake here, the initial interview, second round interview, and job offer success rates the same as they were in the other example. What this translates to in terms of the legwork you have to do on your side, again, if we start at the bottom, is that if you want one job offer, you got to get 2 second round or final round interviews, and you have to get 4 first round interviews. How many applications does it take to get to that? It takes, if you have done the 10% success rate and it's a great fit and you've tailored your resume beautifully, you need 40 online applications to get 4 first round interviews. Right? So that's about a 10 applications to get 1 interview kind of a rate. And if you are not tailoring really well, it would take you 133 applications to get a first round interview, which is about, what, 33-ish applications to get 1 interview? So again, if you're not getting rates that are close to this, there are probably things in your process you can be changing to be more efficient, more effective, and to get you across the finish line sooner, which is part of what this motivation is all about. Now, let's talk about the last piece of this here, momentum maker number 5, which is prioritizing strategic self-care like a MoFo. Like we talked about at the beginning, sometimes job searching sucks, and there's almost no way job searching will feel like rainbows and puppies over time consistently. So stop trying to force it or pretend like it should. Some questions to ask yourself that are very self-care based are, can you make it more fun? Maybe it's that once I have sent out 10 requests for warm introductions for the day, I get to go play on my Nintendo Switch and go play Mario Party for an hour, or I get to go for a beautiful walk in the sunshine, or I get to make myself a cool whipped coffee, right? Can I make it more fun? Can I give myself some fun music in the background? Can I give myself a dance break after every 5 warm introduction email requests that I make? Finding ways to put more joy and life and fun in can help keep that motivation up. Can you make your effort more time-bound or more efficient? A lot of times what I will tell people is, okay, you're feeling totally demotivated in your job search. What you're gonna do is you're gonna set a timer on your phone or get one of those like egg timers that you would have in your kitchen. You're gonna set that timer for 1 hour. And you are going to do as much, let's say, resume tailoring as you possibly can in that 1 hour. You're not going to go on Facebook. You're going to use one of those, blocker apps on your browser to keep it so that you're totally focused on your resume. And at the end of an hour, you're going to stop. And whatever you've done at that point is enough. And let's just see how far you can get in an hour. And when people are forced into being super focused and super productive, you can actually get way more done than you think you can. So give yourself a way to make it time bound so that you become more efficient. If you're spending 8 hours a day job searching, they're probably not your most efficient hours. So maybe you say, okay, I do 2 hours in the morning and 90 minutes in the afternoon, and I'm gonna make those as effective as they possibly can be. And then I give myself permission to breathe, take a break, watch some Netflix, do whatever I gotta do. But to bring us in for a landing here, it might be that you need to take a mini break, right? If you have been sending in applications and doing 8 hours a day for the last 3 weeks and you're exhausted and feeling frustrated and let down, you might need a break. And it's okay to give yourself a mini break. It could be a long weekend, it could be a week, it could be a month. But if you aren't feeling energized and excited and committed to potential new jobs, you're not going to sound like it. You're not going to sound like it in your outreach emails. You're not going to sound like it in your cover letter. You're not going to sound like it in the phone screen. And that means that all the effort and energy that you're putting into your job search will be less productive and efficient than if you took a week or two off to recharge, have active recovery, take care of yourself, and do some healing. So I will leave us with Melissa's story today. So Melissa is a gal who works in journalism. So like a sort of funky industry to be in anytime, especially now. And she was stuck in a state and at a publication that she didn't really want to be at. And she felt like she'd been doing everything and she was burned the hell out. So I said to her, Melissa, what you need to do is give yourself permission to take even just a week off from job searching. You sound so hopeless and so desperate on the phone that anybody else talking to you is going to feel more pity for you than desire to actually advocate for you and help. You want to be coming in with generative, excited, clean energy to make it easy for people to support you. So Melissa said, okay, I have a trip to New York to do some networking. So let me do that and then I'll come home and then I will just chill and rest for a week or two just to let myself get back into a good headspace. So she went to New York, and I think even just knowing that she had the break coming up, that she was just going to be able to relax and not have to worry about job searching, made an energetic difference in how she showed up in the room in New York. So she had those conversations, came back, rested, and then started to hear some bites, started to hear some interest from the people in New York a couple weeks later of, hey, it was so great to meet you. Have you been introduced to this person? Or did you know that this organization has got an opportunity coming up? And she was able to successfully then reach out in that new energy space, have those informational conversations in that next round, and successfully secure a job working in journalism that would get her to move to New York. So here is the bottom line. To keep up your motivation and momentum, you want to have a clear why, you want to start with relationships, you want to be a better candidate on paper, you want to measure your results to make sure you're getting the results that make sense given the inputs you are doing, and you want to take breaks as you need them. Hashtag hang in there, sister. Now, let me offer up one more thing, because again, if more information was the answer, we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs. So don't let this information die on the vine. This is hard and you don't have to do it alone. So if you have people in your life like those cheerleaders who can support you, lean on them. If you're looking for somebody in your life to be able to support you, I'd love to offer myself up to help. If you want support to take the information and apply it to land a job, I have my calendar open at getcareerclarity.com/connect. And I would be so happy to have a conversation to say, okay, what's working? What kind of support do you need? What would be most helpful? And we can talk about working together or if there are other resources that would be useful for you. So these conversations are totally free. I've helped more than 500 people make job changes, so I know what questions to ask you. And I've had clients land roles at these places, and I've even had clients landing roles in a recession. I just had somebody land a role at Amazon last week. So it is doable. It is possible for you. So if you would love some help brainstorming and talking through what's going on and how to make it even better, please go to getcareerclarity.com/connect and snap up one of those times. I think there's one left in April and quite a few in May. So be not afraid to click through and take a look at the times available in May, because I'd love to chat with you to get you the results that you want so you can get back to work or get into work that lights you up. So I'll go ahead and put up the get in touch slide here. But Sam, I'd love if you want to throw some of those questions from the Q&A over. If you asked a question and I haven't addressed it in the presentation, stick around for a couple more minutes and I'll see if I can address a couple of those, as long as you've got the time, Sam.
Yeah, I think we have about 4 minutes before a coworker will probably kick me off of the Zoom account. So let's get to as many as possible. Also,
Great.
just a quick plug, Lisa has a great Fairygodboss group. So I'll include the link to her group where she'll be happy to answer any questions that we can't get to today, because looks like there are a bunch. But I picked out one that I think a lot of people are probably wondering right now. It's from Meredith. She says, do you expect that the percent and rates for interviews will be the same right now or lower than normal? For example, should we expect to be hearing back less because of like hiring freezes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if there's a hiring freeze, there are probably not going to be jobs available online for you to be applying to. So that will sort of cut that piece out entirely. Most companies are pulling back those job postings rather than just leaving them out there in perpetuity. In terms of if these rates are different right now, we just don't know yet. So what I will tell you is that in good times, I actually tend to see clients have more like a 1 in 8 or a 1 in 5 success rate with online applications with no introduction, because of how well they are tailoring their resume, tailoring their cover letter, and being thoughtful and intentional about how they're sending in an application. So when I was saying 1 in 10, that's a little bit more of a conservative rate for you to begin with. But it's also going to give you some really quick feedback of if you've applied for 20 jobs and you haven't heard back about any opportunities to interview yet, that's probably a good point to say, okay, what can I do to up my job search game? Because it's a competitive marketplace right now, and you don't want to just settle for like, well, I guess I'm only going to get 1 interview for every 40 applications, and just let yourself go to that point without getting additional support on how to make yourself a more compelling candidate, right? That's a lot of applications to just send into those applicant black holes of doom with the applicant tracking systems. So if we can get you better results and more efficient, and adding those warm relationships as a way to make your work more effective, it's totally worth doing. So I added some cushion to those numbers to make it what I think might be more realistic in this time, but don't give yourself that intellectual out of like, well, it's just going to be different right now, so I don't need to get support.
Yeah. It's also
for you, Meredith.
It's worth doing just like a quick Google search to see if there's been any news about the company recently, maybe going on a potential hiring freeze. If it's, you know, in the waters, you think it's about to happen, maybe focus your efforts on a company where you know they're actively growing and actively hiring right now. And then a lot of
actually, if you can remind me, there is an Airtable out there where candidates are actively contributing information about what companies writ large are on hiring freezes, which again does not mean you shouldn't make relationships there, but it's probably not going to be a good place to be applying, or you shouldn't be looking at jobs there right now. But I can include that too, so that you've got an immediate place to go look and see for these bigger companies of who's responding in what way right now. So where are my best opportunities?
Yeah, if you could send me that. I know I saw it somewhere, but I did not save the link.
Yeah, I'm gonna we had a note here.
A few questions kind of on the same topic here, so I'm going to group them all together for the sake of time. But Mara and Lizzie are asking something kind of about that relationship network. So Mara's asking, how do you know if your connectors are reliable, or you could trust that they're actually going to do the outreach that you're doing? And kind of on that same note, Lizzie's asking about, you know, is it okay if I can ask these people for informational interviews when I'm only interested in a specific job? And how do I go about wording like that warm request for that informational interview? So I think it's just kind of improving the success of those asks, and kind of any tips you have along those lines.
Yes, totally. So to the question of how do I word that request, in my online course, we talk about this a lot, but I did actually an interview on the Career Warrior podcast where I just talked about like a short and sweet version of how you can phrase that message. So Sam, again, I'll send you a link to that so that you can go ahead and listen to that and go through the exact language and just jot it down in a way that works for you to be able to do an outreach message that's sensitive to the situation, that is likely to get a response rate, and that's going to be helpful. To the earlier question about how can you trust that your connector is actually going to do what they say they're going to do, you can't. You have to ask and go on faith and make requests to people and follow up and be persistent, sort of like pleasantly persistent in your follow-up with them. Right? Can we trust anything or anybody right now? No, we can't trust it 100% on faith. So it's your responsibility to keep following up and doing the nudges and the things that you need to do to get the results that you want. If that connector totally craps out on you, it is what it is. You'll remember that and not reach out to them next time. But look for other people in your network who might be more reliable connectors, and lean into them.
Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they like to say.
Totally.
Okay, and then I think this is the last question here. Let's get to it real quick. Maxine asks, do you think it's appropriate to connect with individuals on LinkedIn who you interviewed with and had a great conversation with, but ultimately didn't even get the job at the company?
Totally. Yeah, if you had a great conversation and you had a connection, totally connect with them on LinkedIn. People who are on LinkedIn tend to be more job searchers than people who are happy and satisfied in their current job. So I'd say connect on LinkedIn for sure. And maybe send that person a follow-up email afterwards to say, thanks so much for the conversation. I loved your perspective. I know it didn't work out this time, but I'd love to still be on your radar for future opportunities at the organization. Or if you know any other companies that are of this same caliber who are hiring for similar roles. Because those people who were interviewing you probably have their eyes on their competitors too, and know when other roles are coming up, and might actually be able to connect you with opportunities if, say, a headhunter or recruiter finds them.
Exactly. Well, thank you, everybody. It looks like we're running over on time, so I'm going to have to end things today. But thank you for hanging in there with us. Thank you again to Lisa for putting on a great presentation and answering so many of our questions. Really appreciate your time with us today.
It was wonderful to be here, Sam. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, everyone, and we will catch you at the next one. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.